Okay, well, thank you very much for having me. For those of you who don't know, but I imagine most of you will, this is Charlie Marillier, a powerlifting athlete and current CEO of British Powerlifting. She got into the role of CEO last year, I think in April? July, but interim from?
We were working as a group.
Okay, working as a group.
From April till July, there were several of us working as a group, just keeping the organisation going.
But yeah, big cheese of British powerlifting. You know, a big pusher of powerlifting generally. You know, I've seen you at a lot of powerlifting things. You came from being the head of British Powerlifting coaching, where you ran the course, which is where I first met you back in September 24. Mm-hmm. And I'd say, you know, generally quite an exciting person to talk to. So thank you very much for having me.
What a nice introduction.
So it would be great if you could just talk to us a little bit about, you know, how you became CEO and, you know, what it was like transitioning from being head of coaching to being head.
I started powerlifting about 20 years ago when I wanted to become better for rugby, and then I found powerlifting. And what really pulled me across from the two sports was the culture of powerlifting, even back then, like particularly back then as well. So it was around equipped lifting. Classic powerlifting was only really recognised by the IPF in 2012-13. And the first World Championships was around 2015. So as you can experience, that's quite recent. That's only about 10, 11 years ago. So when I started, for the first 10 years, it was only equipped powerlifting. And if you've ever been around equipped powerlifting, you'll know that it's very much a team sport. So you don't tend to do it alone. You don't train in the gym alone. You train with your team. So I had a phenomenal team back then where my coach, Pat Constantine, who was then the world number 2, 59 kilo lifter, squatted 250, he was incredible. A couple of others, and his wife, and then my brother and me. And it was wonderful. We had such a great environment. In Swindon, several gyms closed down and they kind of kicked all us powerlifters out because we're equipped powerlifters and, you know, knee wraps, squat suit, chalker, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, fast forward to 2013, I thought, oh, this is ridiculous. Let's just set up my own powerlifting club. So I set up Swindon Barbell. And then for a couple of years, we bounced around gyms again. And I was like, oh, this is so silly. Anyway, in 2016, one of those years, 15, 16, we found this venue. And I was so delighted by it. And I thought, oh, brilliant. And I was working as a PT and I was running a couple of other businesses. I thought, oh, great. I can carry on with my passion. This is lovely. So we set this up. And there was just a handful of us at the time. Myself, Christy Savetta, who was British equipped 84 kilo record holder. I think she took the record of 247.5 squat, which is incredible. It was my record and she took it off me. Not that I'm bitter at all, but her, Matt Watson, they're now married now, myself, my husband, and Helen Toms, and a couple of other people, we all started it up together about 10 years ago, which was great. There's a reason why I'm giving you this long context, okay? So hold on. It's a long story, but there's a reason at the end. So for the first few years, several of us are international lifters and we're just having a great time and we're going to the Southwest Championships. This is when powerlifting starts to get quite popular. This is kind of, like I said, 2015, 16, 17, 18. So suddenly we get really busy and it is wonderful. We're having the best time. Until 2018 happened and I got a massive back injury. And it was back, glutes, leg. It was so many things. Fast forward 8 months, and I also fell pregnant as well. So and in that time I also sprained my ankle on the side that the back injury was. So there's a lot of things that meant I couldn't recover from this back injury. Had my son in 2019, COVID hit in 2020. So suddenly, the last 5 years of my open powerlifting career have been taken away from me. I can't remember what year it was, I think it was 2016. I was British equipped champion, British classic champion. I think I'd got a European medal. Like I was loving life. I was loving it. 2 years later, I can't even walk or sit down.
Yeah.
So it was really hard. COVID comes along, the gym shuts down, then powerlifting is gone all together, right? And then slowly over the last few years, like powerlifting comes back into play, the gym's open, we get to do our sport again. In that time, so from about 2017, 2018, I was involved in the coaching courses, and that then led me to become coaching lead. And I found that I was super passionate about it. Developing the coaching staff, developing the future of powerlifting, really guiding people into what the culture of powerlifting should be. And you'll hear me talk about this a lot, because we will have a ton of different processes to achieve a certain goal. But powerlifting is about the culture that we have in this sport. And it is an incredible culture, and it's a really quite unique culture as well. So I was able to influence on some level the culture and the skills that we're developing for the leaders of this sport. And I absolutely loved that. Then 2025 rolled around, and it was quite a tough year for powerlifting, both in Britain and in the IPF. And what happened, but I got a phone call from a couple of the board guys, and they said, look, can you just step in and help out with us? I said, of course, I'll always help out with powerlifting. So I started working with some of the board, including people like Tony, Cliff, the financial director, and Adam Thomas, Scott Simon, who was kind of in and out of the board at the time. And a handful of other people. Kim Cowell came back in and did a lot of support with us as well. And I just thought, as I always knew, these people are incredible. They are amazing. And I thought, this is the dumbest idea I've had in such a long time. But I spoke to a few people, and I said to Tony Cliff, and I am going to call him out on this. I said, Tony, do you think I could help out as CEO between the hours of 9 till 3, Monday to Thursday, and maybe a few evenings? And he went, yeah, no problem. I said, okay, put my name down. So then I repeated this conversation to him in February. I went, thanks for that, mate. How accurate was your, yeah, of course you can. And I just got a little chuckle from him.
Yeah, 9 to 3.
9 till 3, yeah, exactly. So that's why I put my name in the hat. Because of that history where I just continually, every day, fell more and more in love with powerlifting, the sport, how it makes you feel, but the people that are involved in it as well. And it's reflective of this club here. And I will talk about Swindon Barbell all day long, because the people in this place are just wonderful. Yeah. But they're wonderful because we have very clear boundaries. You come here for powerlifting, you have a problem, you talk to me, we will work it out together. We are never against one another, we're never fighting, we're here for one another, we're a team. And you see that in a handful of clubs that you see around this country. Sadly, you don't find that in a lot of the powerlifting world, and I'm not alienating this at all, but in the remote, classic focused world, you don't tend to find that really tight-knit support network, because people tend to train alone and they won't have that face-to-face human connection. So you feel quite isolated. And I think there's a very different culture there than the one that I've loved. But that doesn't mean I'm going to stop trying to import and expand the culture that I absolutely love. So that's how I came to this job.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean about the equip guys. I've had my ear absolutely talked off by a few people. So I can
They're a great group of people, and what I love about powerlifting is it's so inclusive. It's so inclusive. Where you have the bench group, you'll have classic and equip bench. Both of them have uniquenesses. Yeah. You've got equip powerlifting, they have some fantastic uniquenesses. You've got classic powerlifting, they have some fantastic uniquenesses. Some of them cross over, some of them are quite specific to their groups, but it's so inclusive. So we can welcome a diverse range of people, and they all have their space.
Everyone's insane in the same way, right?
As I said to a course recently, What I love about powerlifting is you have a speckling of neurotypicals in and around this sport, but the majority of us have some kind of weirdness, and that's great.
Yeah, you can say that again. Well, okay. So now we've got a little bit of background about how you've made it to be CEO. I think something people don't appreciate as much is how the structure of British Powerlifting works, and how actually diversified the power structure is in the board. So it'd be great to hear like a little bit about, one might imagine the CEO is, sort of a Sam Altman type, where they're walking around saying stuff and it is true because they said it, versus what I get the sense that British Powerlifting is quite different. It's a lot more democratic and involved.
Yeah, and where can I go with this? So I was going to start with, it's a volunteer organisation, so we have to respect the fact that they're volunteers. But then I also know that different organisations will operate differently. So I'll only talk about what we have right now. We are very democratic because I view the role of CEO as a plate spinner, or probably not as plate spinner. Just hang on, let me change that to a connector.
Yeah.
So if I tried to take on all the jobs, I would never get it done. We'd just be nowhere. And we've seen that happen before. What I try to do, not always successfully, and then I have Fraser, our wonderful chair, going, Charlie, you've got a team. And I'm like, oh yeah, well done, thanks. What I try to do is something will come in and I go, oh, that's Craig in anti-doping, like he'll be able to manage that. Or, oh, do you know what? Kim Cowell, the championship secretary, she knows that. Or, okay, this is a question for the membership. So then I'm trying to like connect it out. Equally, we might have stuff that is really quite complex. So then I pull people together. So an example of that is I met with Sam Cook from the club's lead a few months ago. And he said, look, I'm really willing to like do what we need to do to grow. Great. So now my job is to link him with some of the external associations. We've linked him with the Association of Colleges. So we're trying to get powerlifting to grow into colleges, a bit like it's done in universities with BUCS. So he's doing some work with them, pulling in Craig Spicer, the coach lead at the moment. He's working with Sam. I'm doing some bits and bobs. We're pulling in some of the other coaches as well. So it's really more of like I need to connect people together so that they can do their magic. Because I don't know if you've ever noticed, in powerlifting, some of these people, most of the people are incredible. We spoke about Rowan just now. When I taught a course, I met him and he's doing his research paper. You're going to correct me on this because I can't exactly remember, but on the language that we use in powerlifting, on how we might self-motivate or externally motivate. Listening to him was wonderful. Equally, listening to Josh Inman, our education lead, he's doing a PhD in VBT in powerlifting. And I love saying that because there's so many acronyms in there. It's not acronyms. It is an acronyms, isn't it?
Acronyms, yeah.
Acronyms, thank you. There's so many acronyms in that. But it rolls off the tongue really nicely. But anyway, talking to him about VBT is great because you can just see the passion in that. Anyway, so I view this role as connecting people together and also checking in with people. For example, if somebody's gone quiet, noticing that they've gone quiet and go, are you okay? Is there something challenging that's going on? And then supporting them to either being able to continue doing their job or allowing them to take a step away. And when I say allowing, I don't mean I give you permission to go.
Permission, yeah.
Allowing them to give themselves the permission that they're not able to do this job, because most people really are dedicated to doing a good job, but sometimes life just gets in the way. And sometimes you need an external factor to say, look, it's okay, if you can't do this, somebody else can do this. You're welcome back another time.
Have a break.
Yeah, because like this is major what's going on for you right now. Yeah. Then when you're ready, come back in a little while. So I would say that's the majority of this job, and that's how we keep it democratic, and that's how we've managed to really expand the amount of people that are involved with pockets of the organisation or the central part of the organisation, but also how I truly believe we have fantastic harmony internally. I know that there will always be challenges externally because it's such a large population, but internally, the board are working fantastically together. I'm so thankful that there's such a dedicated board and they support me, and if I've got challenges, I can go to them and we can talk. And the subcommittee leads are really active, really dedicated in the roles that they want to do. So that feels like it's good evidence that this approach is effective for this particular organisation. So I'm pretty happy about that.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it's very like devolved kind of organisational structure. I mean, you're all a third of the way through your term now, I think,
maybe,
more or less. I think it's 3 years with an option for 2 more. So, is it what you've expected? How's it changed as you're coming to the end of your first year pretty soon with it?
Is it what I expected?
Well, apart from
largely,
the hours.
Yeah, it is largely what I expected. There were a few surprises along the way. Were they surprises? That's a really tricky one to answer. Okay. I will provide something succinct so that I'm not umming and ahhing the whole time. It is what I expect, but obviously it was... Oh, do you know, I can't answer that actually. It is and it isn't what I expected. It is what I expected because it's powerlifting. I know the people in powerlifting. I know how Tony is. I know how Adam is. I know how Clara is. These people in the board. What I didn't anticipate was the overwhelming positive response that I've had from so many people. And I don't mean because of my work. I just mean because of the work that we're doing together. So I wasn't prepared for that. That's been brilliant. I wasn't prepared for the overwhelming, what would you call it, like influx of people when we started really working oh my God, help me with this word.
Democratically.
Thank you. Demographically. When we started working really well together and collaboratively, the influx of people was just wonderful. Recently, we recruited Howard Q. I hope I said his name right.
Yes,
Q?
yeah.
Q. Okay, great.
Good friends with him.
Right.
Yeah.
Great guy. We recruited him to be the recruitment and volunteers manager. And he also does that in his day job with UCL.
Yeah.
He's just been so responsive. He's been great. I've got a question around volunteer agreements or who can do this job or how we're going to expand this, and he's just super responsive. So when we've got people around like that, I think to myself, well, I wasn't expecting that, but it's a really good expectation that I've had. And then, has there been any disappointments or challenges? Yeah, there's been some challenges. But thankfully, we've really managed to pull together. And what's the most important thing is that we've managed to learn from it. Yeah. So the changes in competitions organisation, that was really challenging as we transferred to what we had in 2025 to what we've got in 2026. But I've got to say, that team is working incredibly well together. Hopefully, we'll see an example of the end result of that at BUCS in next weekend. Yeah. And Al organising the juniors in May. She is... Both Al and Rudy are just doing so much with the competitions team. Adam and all the rest of the competitions team are just working so hard to produce events that everybody's going to enjoy and be proud of. And they're all they take their jobs very much to heart, and they want to be proud of themselves, and they want everybody else to enjoy it. I don't know if that answered your question because I think it does. But I think largely it is what I expected. Just the time, perhaps, and the amount of people that moan. Maybe I wasn't expecting that.
I think things with powerlifting tend to inflate and fill every inch of space that you can give them. So
and when you've got a little 6-year-old at home that also wants all of your attention, you've got to balance that carefully. And that actually has been not what I was prepared for. But I think I've learned and I've balanced it.
CEO, you kind of knew what you're getting into. Children, no chance.
Yeah, and then putting the two together and balancing that out. Yeah, that's been a little bit challenging, but I think we're getting there. I think I'm learning to park one and then focus on another.
Yeah. I thought it'd be nice if we did like an icebreaker kind of thing, where I'd say some statements I've collected from sort of people in my club and people around the gym. You can do like an agree, disagree, then we might talk about that. So I thought the first one, a good one would be, a powerlifter is someone who celebrates the success of their fellow athlete. Completely
agree with that. That's the culture I'm talking about.
I think that is something that I've noticed has been positively changing. So yeah, it's nice to see that. I think it is. We always
had it in the past. Yeah. And there was definitely a dilution of that attitude and culture for a little while, but I'm definitely seeing tons of that around. And then the fact that you've even said it is wonderful.
Okay. Being a successful and current athlete makes me a better CEO.
That is wildly inaccurate. Because I am not a successful athlete. By any stretch of the imagination.
The open powerlifting record says otherwise. But do you think that competing makes you better at your job?
Oh my goodness. No. It helps me understand powerlifters. Because the job of a CEO and the job of leading powerlifters, which you could argue is a CEO, but I would argue that it's separate. The job of a CEO and the job of leading a group of powerlifters, I think, are two quite different jobs. A lot of the skills can intersect, but being a CEO, there's got to be a detachment from your love of the people. And that is something that you can ask anybody. I love the people. Even the ones that can appear challenging, because I know that deep down there's a real dedication to something that we all love. So being a CEO, that's actually one of the things I probably have to, the biggest challenge is I have to try and separate myself from my love of the people in this sport, where you have to make decisions where you go, oh, do you know what, that's really going to be challenging for this group of people, but we're doing it because of safety reasons or because of governance reasons or because of, I'll tell you what, a really good example. This is a perfect example. Volunteer expenses. So historically, volunteer expenses were what they were, but that was at the risk of not adhering to HMRC regulations. We are now adhering to HMRC regulations, which means that the expenses are what they are now, which is up to £60 with receipts being evidenced. Which is, we have to do that for HMRC regulations, but I don't want to do that. I want to give people money for turning up and helping out, because I think that's really fair compensation. But the government don't want us to do that, so we can't do that.
So previously it was sort of higher and less administrative. Like there's a higher amount of money that you could earn as a volunteer. And
yeah. So, and it was also part of the vote as well. So previously it was £75 for a volunteer for a day, and I think it was £60 expenses for referees. And then last year it was voted in the AGM that we would consolidate those two and put them as a fixed. However, the considerations of HMRC regulations wasn't taken into account, where you can't just pay people because then there incurs tax implications. So it has to be expenses based rather than just, here you go, here's a flat out payment. Which I think has been really challenging for the volunteers, and I fully understand that, and I'm massively frustrated about it. So that's a really good example of separating CEO from a leader of powerlifting. And when I say a leader of powerlifting, I'm largely thinking about like my little group here of a handful of people. I'm not talking about thousands of people. I'm talking about like these few people here. So that's probably been pretty interesting. And that's why I would say I disagree with that, even though I'd like to agree with it. But thanks for the compliment.
Let's do an easy one. Classic is better than equipped.
Disagree.
I could see that coming.
All powerlifting is great.
Ooh.
To me, it's all on an even scale. There is no better or worse. I have seen. There was a big New Zealand classic lifter a few years ago, 74 kilos, and I've forgotten his name right now. But I saw an interview he did, and they said, how can we make powerlifting great? And he said, abolish equipped lifting. That is such an exclusive attitude.
Yeah.
That doesn't include a ton of people. I've been reaching out to members, asking them to give me some feedback on our long-term strategy development. So I've had quite a few people respond, which is great. But even there, one of the pieces of feedback was, what would you like to see from powerlifting long term? It's get rid of equipped lifting. These attitudes don't belong in powerlifting. Powerlifting is for everybody. So equipped lifting is a team sport, and any equipped lifter, I'm very confident, will be behind me on that one. Maybe Tony isn't, because he's in his gym, but even he likes to be around people sometimes. Classic powerlifting is really accessible. No. You can do it alone in a gym. You can get an online coach. You pay a few £100s for the kit. Boom, you're done. Amazing. So we've got a sport for team people, and also people like to hurt themselves. We've got a sport that is easily accessible, and then we've got bench press. Well, that's a sport where people who can't do squat and deadlift, they can also access the sport, whether it's classic or equipped. Like, there's so many avenues of the sport where people can enjoy. Why would we ever remove any one of these? When you can look at other NGBs, excuse me, other sports that are really fighting hard to try and either grow their grassroots or to diversify their sport for inclusion. We're there. Yeah. Why would we change that? Yeah. That's nuts. We are so successful at the moment. Why would we change it?
I was half expecting you to say, well, if we look at it historically, equipped is classic and rules the new thing, but...
No, it's more about inclusivity.
It's inclusivity.
I respect the history hugely, but realistically, it very much started out with classic, and then for decades was in equipment, and now we've gone just this wonderful world of a bit of everything. Mix, which I know will make majority of people sick hearing that. Oh, I'm so sanctimonious. But I do love the fact that we are inclusive for everybody. And we're only going to get better because we've got plans.
Okay, how about, obviously, there's been a lot of talk recently about rules in powerlifting. What do you think about consistent implementation is the only way to ensure fair implementation?
Do we mean referees' rules?
Referees' rules, I mean, generally.
Yeah, absolutely. Being consistent is going to be the best way to be fair. And I think consistency with the application of rules takes consistency of working within those rules, which means that rules can't change very often. And I want to say education, but I don't mean that. I mean support in the skill development of applying those rules, which could be refereeing plenty so that you get the experience. It could be working with your other referees so that you learn from them about the different rules. It could be having a consistent competitions team that support promoters to consistently supply a level of a competition with consistent rules. So the easiest way to apply consistency is to have consistency. And we're only a quarter way through 2026, and 2025 was a very inconsistent, up in the air kind of year. So I think we need a little bit more time. Like, humans need time.
Yeah.
And I think we're seeing some progress, but we definitely need a bit more time.
Yeah. And then one last one. Bench is the one true lift And the other two are a warm up and cool down.
Did you get that from Scott Simon?
No, I got that from me.
Okay. I see him saying that squat is standing bench and deadlift is pulling bench, I think it is. No. We know I'm going to disagree with that.
Yeah, I mean, there aren't that many people that disagree with that who are coming up on a 160 bench in the equip, so it's not a given. So yeah, if sorry, my words. If you don't mind moving on a little bit, it'd be interesting to talk about, in sort of the months leading up to you becoming CEO, you were pretty vocal about some political issues, let's say, in the sport, and something that I really enjoyed was seeing that. And I think I left a comment on one of your posts about it. You did like a really nice series where you were celebrating female coaches in the sport, and I'd be interested to hear, whether you think the British Powerlifting CEO hat would force you to change how you respond to that. Obviously the celebrating side of it is positive and easy, but also the calling out side, one might worry that has to change a little bit.
So let's make your question very factually accurate.
Yeah.
I did speak out against something I saw online, which I thought was very unfair. And I spoke out about, I think it was about two things in 2025. One of them was within British Powerlifting, and one was about the wider IPF landscape. So I think you're probably referring to the one within British Powerlifting. And I did speak out about it because I was really sad to read what I read online. And then I spoke to that individual and got an understanding as to where they were coming from. And I spoke to several other individuals. What was great was that they took accountability for what they've said. They gave an explanation, whether you agree with that explanation or not. They took accountability. They were very sorry. And since I've seen them working pretty hard to overcome that and to change and to grow as a person. So what's really important is to understand is that we will make mistakes. I'm going to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. We'll all make mistakes. But if we can take accountability for that, to apologise and to also work hard to change the future, that's the most important thing. One thing that I always truly believe in is that we can't change the past, but we can change the future. So we have to make changes now to change the future. I don't think I'm a particularly outspoken person on social media. I think I did a couple of videos last year. And I don't like to, quote from what you've just said, quote unquote, call people out, because I don't think it's about calling people out. I think it's about understanding people's motivations and helping them understand the impact of their actions and getting us to work together. So I've always had that attitude. It's probably a good argument that attitude and that my way of going about that has been refined over the last year, perhaps, because I have been actively working with people to help me help people to understand their actions. So I didn't really have a lot of guidance back then. I've had a lot more now, so that's great. And then what's also a fact check is that I didn't just celebrate women, I also celebrated men as well. Yeah. So I celebrated Jason Koopman as well as, and I only did about 3 or 4 of these posts because I'm just not a social media person. Yeah. I don't really like posting that much. And it was taking a little bit of time, but it was really nice for me to celebrate. So I celebrated Sarah Bradley, Kim Cowell, Jason Koopman. I actually think it was only 3. It might have been 4, but I can't remember the 4th one.
I think Scott Simon threw his hat in the ring at some point.
He tried to, yeah. And so it was lovely, and I really loved doing that. The only downside of doing that is that inevitably you're going to forget somebody, and that makes them feel a bit rubbish. But rather than attacking people, and I've done a social media post this morning. We are on Friday the 17th of April. So I did a social media post this morning about the recent anti-doping rule violations. And the post was about calling the community to start working together again, not to get overly involved in division and bickering and attacking one another because this person said this and it said it in the wrong way, or this person said this and they don't agree with that because that's not actually fact. Like, how about let's just work together? We love powerlifting, we love competing, we love being on the platform, and we want to do a clean, we want to compete in a clean sport. So let's just focus on that. So I have learned a little bit since last year, but I feel like my motivations are still the same. It's about collaboration and working together and celebration.
Yeah.
Disgustingly positive, isn't it?
Yeah. I think it's a good answer. I mean, I think it's important to frame things and to feel like more than just frame things, that change is growth rather than restriction. So it's good to hear that it's growth rather than restriction.
Yeah, definitely.
In your heart. Another thing that's, again, you've only been in for a brief time, a year, but you spoke about early on, is changes to the governance structure, and particularly to the Articles of Association for the membership. For those of you at home who have not pained yourself trying to read them, they are quite messy. And one of the things that slightly unglamorous things that I get excited about is your proposed changes to them. Yeah. And it'd be interesting to hear, you've had nearly a year of it now. How's it coming along? How have your goals changed as you've got through it?
Yeah, it is coming along slowly, but it is coming along. And these changes aren't just desirable, they're essential. If we're going to be able to be recognised by Sport England that we adhere to at least tier 1 of their code of governance, our articles must change. For example, currently I believe we state that we can have a board of up to 20 members. No, that's a no-no for UK Sport England, sorry. They are looking at a maximum, I want to say, of 12, and we are looking at restructuring our board to have around about 9 in there, which is great. What I would like to say is that I have done very little on this. It has been predominantly the work of Kim Cowell and James Taylor. They are beautiful legal minds that know everything. And they are advising us, the board, very well on how to restructure. We've now got a new structure that we're going to be working on. And a few newsletters ago, so a few weeks ago, I published a schematic, or like a flow chart of British powerlifting, which is what we are right now, but it does also look at showing Sport England how we're not a board and then 20 subcommittees. We're a board, and we're a board in the right amount of numbers at the moment. And then we have about 10 subcommittees, and then we have
subcommittees.
We call them subject leads.
Yeah.
So they're not committees. For example, Adam Riley, the Chief Technical Officer, he doesn't have a committee under him. He is the Chief Technical Officer. So he is the subject lead for rules within powerlifting, for powerlifting rules within British powerlifting. Currently, I've put Josh Inman as a subject lead because he doesn't have a committee underneath him. He works with the coaching committee. So Craig Spicer with the coaching lead, he has a committee under him, so he's a subcommittee. Josh is a subject lead where he knows absolutely everything about the courses, the education pathway, the future development, but he does work super close with the coaching committee and is heavily involved in that as well. So he kind of has two hats. So it's really important that the membership understand how the organisation is set up, also so that they can communicate with us better. The amount of emails that I might get that is nothing to do with me, like it is to do with education, or it's to do with refereeing, or it's to do with competitions. So I just farm them out to them and go, right, you guys, or the membership. Like, so Tom Beach manages a membership. He doesn't have a committee with him, so he's a subject lead. Now that we've got that restructuring in place, we can start working on completely overhauling how the articles are written and what we as an organisation are aiming towards. But I think we're probably still looking at another 12 to 18 months potentially for anything. what I will say is there will be a lot of member engagement with that.
Yeah.
So it's not a case of we're just doing this and then suddenly the changes are going to come about. Hopefully you've experienced over the last few months, we're quite keen on engaging the members. Once we've got, and I'm not going to remember the time frame, but once we've got to a certain level in those changes, we're going to have a members engagement to talk about the proposed changes and to have the members' feedback as to how effective or ineffective they think they're going to be. So these article changes aren't just going to be a IPF rule change.
Yeah.
I'm not calling the IPF out, but it's the best way to exemplify like how we're not going to do it. We're not going to say, here's the rule changes, bye-bye. It's, here's our proposed changes. What do you guys think? Okay, let's go away and work on this.
Yeah. I mean, is it sort of a tear-down job, or do you think it's got good bones, as it were? Yeah.
What we've got at the moment,
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of changes that are needed.
A lot of changes.
But we know what's needed. None of this is like stabbing in the dark. We know what's needed. It's just a case of ensuring that what we put in place is fit for purpose, which is really important. It's not just a case of, oh, Sport England have said that, so we're going to copy that and we're going to get a lawyer to write it so that it is what they want. It's about what powerlifters want, and then we make it adhere to what Sport England, and I'm talking about Sport England because that's really who we're dealing with at the moment. We, British Powerlifting, are probably working mostly with Sport England at the moment because the people that we work with largely work with Sport England. Sport England have engaged with us. Sport Scotland work with Claire as well, so it's not just Sport England. Sport NI have been working with Josh, the CEO of Northern Irish Powerlifting, and I think Wales has been engaging with theirs as well. So we're not exclusively talking to Sport England. It's just that I've had conversations with Sport England. I've got a really good understanding from what they want. James Taylor often works with Sport England, so he has a good understanding. So we're going through that. However, we're going to have to ensure that this is fit for purpose for all home nations, not just us.
Yeah. Interesting. Would you say, I mean, it feels like a big theme of what's going through British powerlifting at the moment is pushing for that funding. Would you say that that's a top of the list, top 3 of the list kind of things on Charlie's to do?
Yeah, probably back in July it was, but...
Stuff's got a little bit exciting since then.
Yes. Yeah, you've got to mould and adapt to what's being put in front of you. I think what has actually changed over the last few months is understanding the impact of some of the issues over the last 18 months on the culture of powerlifting and on the unity of powerlifting. And I think if we can continue to work together, we will achieve some of these things a lot quicker. It was recognised by the previous leadership team, and it's also recognised by this leadership team, that corporate funding is far easier to achieve than government funding. So, we've recognised that and we're going down that route first. Yeah. But that doesn't mean we're dismissing this entirely, not at all. It's just that it is such a long-term achievement that we can't do it in a very short amount of time. I still really want to get tier 3 within 5 years. Well, it'd be 4 years now. But and I think with some of the guidance we've got so Fraser Montgomery, our interim chair, is also involved with Snow Sports Scotland. That's a lie. Scottish curling. Sorry. I don't know where that came from. And he's got a really good understanding of what it is to be a tier 3 sport. Yeah. So every now and again, he gives me ideas of stuff that we've got to consider for long term, and can we plant those seeds now for the growth in 2 to 3 years. Yeah. So it is a really long term development. Has my priority changed? No, but short term issues
things pop up,
and then once they're dealt with, then I get back to this.
Yeah, I think it's worth noting generally British Powerlifting operates, it doesn't have that much money. Most of the money it gets is from membership. It doesn't take a genius to figure out however many members there are times by your 35 or 50 pounds a year that you pay. Actually, it's up to 250 grand a year for Tier 1, right? Tier 1 Sport England funding, or am I missing that?
It depends on what you apply for, and it's.
But it's a lot of money. It doesn't matter the exact
we wouldn't be able to fund, for example, our day-to-day processes at Tier 1. That would be Tier 3.
Yeah.
Tier 1 would be more. So I'll give you the example that I had the conversation with Sport England with. If we wanted to grow the grassroots, we could potentially apply for funding from Sport England to create a tour around England of accessibility and interaction with powerlifting to help people start up clubs and to understand how they can get the equipment and like an education tour of growing powerlifting. That's an example of what we could apply for funding for. Then once we apply for the funding, then they check our governance structure and say, yeah, okay, you adhere to probably Tier 1 of our governance code. So yes, okay, we can work with you. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to get all the funding. It just means like, okay, you are an organisation that operates with relatively good governance. Tier 3 means you operate with governance that we think is a professional sport. It's really good governance. You operate with good governance. So yeah, we can work with you. But there are still these parameters in place. For us to be able to be a funded sport, like you see Scottish curling, for example, that requires being Tier 3. That realistically requires being an Olympic sport as well. Because much of the funding goes to Olympic sports. But that's the landscape right now. I don't know what the landscape is going to be like in 5 years. What's really important though is that UK sport code of governance adherence is a long-term strategy, and I mean ad infinitum long-term strategy for us to become a professional sport. So this is not like a short-term flash in the pan kind of dream. If powerlifting wants to be akin to, let's look at BMX, where it got into the Olympics a few years ago. If we want to, and it came from like some kids playing in a park to suddenly it's an Olympic sport. If we want to go down that route, there's a lot of changes we've got to bring in, and these are going to take a long time. So it is, we have short-term wins, such as the corporate sponsorship, and then we've got the long-term wins. Yeah, they're going to take a lot of work, but valuable work.
No, it's really interesting what you say about Sport England and professional sport. I understand the requirements around being a professional sport to be the main, those statements are what's driving the changes to the rules around handlers, right? We've had this introductory period with the coaching license where you do a few pretty cheap online courses. It's like sort of 50, 60 quid, and then you can handle it at nationals. But obviously next year it's changing that you need to have done the coaching course. Because the idea then is that if people have done a certain amount of safeguarding DEI training and they've paid for a course, they are, in the eyes of Sport England, professional, which allows them, which allows you, collectively you, British Powerlifting, to be a professional sport. Obviously there are programs that acknowledge, skills and history and other learning outside that. But it feels to me like, I think BUCS to me carries a very different level of requirement for professional sport than, say junior nationals does, which is sort of the next one up, I think. But also the term professional seems to be interesting to me because it's not based around whether or not you make money from coaching. I would, in 2027, I'd be able to go and handle at Open Nationals because I've done my level 1. I wouldn't describe myself as a professional coach. I'd barely describe myself as a coach. So it seems interesting to me that the rules are structured around that. And I was wondering if that's something you could talk about.
So let's just bring your question to a little bit more factual accuracy.
Sure.
So the coaching license, and I say this with respect, the coaching license, what I've just spoken about is around the organisation becoming professional. So the people working within the organisation, the CEO, the financial director, the secretary, whatever, they can be paid. So they are professional. That's what we're working towards long term. And the reason we're working towards that long term is so that there is consistency within the operations and the governance of the organisation. Okay, so let's park professional over there. Coaching license. We've taken professional and applied it to coaching license. That's not the case. Safety. That's what we're looking at for coaching license, is safety. Are these people who are taking people to a dangerous sport? Most sports are dangerous, but this is a very dangerous sport, and we've seen that in the last 14 months. We've seen some really good examples about how dangerous this sport can be. Are we taking people to a dangerous sport, and are we ensuring their safety? Not just from us providing a safe environment, but are we ensuring that the people who are operating in this sport are operating safely? So how can we do that? The best way to do that is education, which we've done over the last few years. There's a really good example of the amount of people who coach at a competition who have had zero education, other than the ones we've enforced, which is safeguarding and DEI. So how can we as an organisation ensure the safety of our participants if we are not monitoring the safety of those people who manage those participants?
I think there is, and my understanding from the Sport England guidance was there was a requirement around the professionality, the safety of people on the platform. I think it is, I think, for example, I'm coached by Ellen from Easy Strong. I don't think she's done a coaching course, she has. Okay. Well, hypothetically, imagine we cloned Ellen. Ellen's existence continued, except she hadn't done a coaching course. Would that not make her a professional coach? And there are some schemes to recognise. For example, I think if you do a degree, you automatically get it because you kind of count that, if I'm correct.
You can be fast tracked.
You can be fast tracked.
Yeah.
Okay. So there are ways that you can jump with it with some aspects of experience. But it's interesting to me that it is do this course. Especially when it's the courses are run on weekends, some weekends a year. If we think about BUCS as, again, it's a good example. It's next week. It's something that I'm going to and I care about there. There's a few hundred athletes there. Probably, most people share handlers because most handlers are just people there. Is it going to be possible to get all of those people trained? Not just from an administrative perspective, are there enough coaching courses? But my university club does not have the funding to pay for someone. Is the expectation then that next year people are just not going to have handlers?
Well, that's why we've got this open forum tonight.
Yeah.
It's for people to have these kind of discussions.
Yeah.
We completely recognise that what we've got in place right now isn't perfect. What we've suggested for next year isn't perfect. What we come up with next probably isn't going to be perfect either. But our main focus is about managing participant safety and ensuring that we can evidence that we are developing a small p, a professional staffing body within our organisation that understands how to manage and develop participants. And I use the word participants because that's what SimSpa and Sport England will use, because obviously you've got lifters or you've got footballers or you've got rugby players. So participants, lifters, you can use them interchangeably for our sport. It's a really challenging one, and we have not got the answer necessarily, but that's why we've got the open forum coming tonight, so that members can put forward their ideas. We think we've got a way that is going to be most effective, but until we have the open forum, until members have their say, and then we can pull that into what we were already thinking might be a good result, I don't really want to say too much, because that's I don't want to jump the gun and then be inaccurate.
Completely.
But it is a real challenge. But then equally, how would you manage it when you are responsible for managing participant safety, both hosting a competition, but also the people taking people to these competitions? And your mate handling you, is that the answer?
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely understand. I mean, I think potentially some of the concerns also come from the fact that as you're increasing requirements, there doesn't seem to be, there's you have to give athlete, but what do you get? I think having been to BUCS last year and been to Bench this year, Bench was run by British Powerlifting, and it was run to a standard where I was like, do you know what? It should be professionals here. BUCS, I mean, I was warming up in like an Olympic squat rack that wasn't bolted down. And it feels to me like there's a disconnect between, potentially the answer then is actually BUCS is separate. BUCS falls between, someone just running a comp and doing the stuff that needs to be sanctioned, and a national series. And it does feel like organisationally, in terms of the standards that it sets for itself, it is between the two. Maybe there's, and you've reflected that, right, with the sort of the halfway house last year with the licenses. So it's interesting to hear, is there an option to do BUCS as a halfway house, or if it can't be, what's gonna make BUCS worth doing all of this? If that makes sense.
And I suppose after tonight, we're going to get a lot more from the members. I think we've got it's disappointing actually. I think we've only got about 20 people coming tonight, which is really disappointing considering how many people are talking about the coaching licence. We've set the online forum as you've got to register for it, and when I checked yesterday, it was only about 20 people.
Well, you might get more people turning
up. I hope so. I want to hear. I don't know if you've noticed this theme, but I want to hear what people have to say. It's really important because the BUCS lived experience is not one that I've lived. So I want to hear that. At the same time, I'm pretty staunch that people who are going to handle people at competitions are going to understand about participant safety.
Yeah.
Your example of Ellen at Easy Strong, we had a coach at one of our courses recently who's been a coach for 6 years. Yeah. And I thought they were going to come along and just do a tick box. They were really interested in the information that we were talking about, and they had some great questions about managing conflict because they haven't come across this, because they've never done anything formal around that. The education that we provide for coaches isn't just about being better at squat, bench and deadlift, it's about being a good coach.
Yeah.
And that also, you can see a mile off the difference between a coach who's had some kind of development, whether it's the coaching courses or they've been developed through Ellen at Easy Strong, or they have been part of the international pathway. Like, you will see a difference between them and a mate handling his mate at a competition. Yeah. This is what we're trying to manage, that we get more of these and less of these.
Yeah. I mean, I'd be really interested to see where you get to. I mean, especially with the sort of, there is, you have a national series and you have the non-national series. You can kind of draw the line, but there is like a sliding spectrum. There's like, on the high end of the non-national series, you have like the divisionals. You've got things like SUCS, and then I'd say on the low end, you've got something like BUCS. And something that I would really like to see, and I'll hopefully voice in the forum this evening, is that there is a sliding scale, and a sliding scale would be good to see in the rules where it's possible.
I think that's reasonable.
The answer could be sport. Tier 1 funding matters to the long-term health of the sport more than 10% of people losing handlers at BUCS, 20% of people losing handlers at BUCS. And if people have done that calculation, then that's fine. But that's fine. It's just, I think people worry that isn't being, people aren't sure that it's necessary, or they aren't sure that it's being calculated. But it sounds like you are either sure that it's necessary or that it's being calculated, probably a bit of both.
I think we've also got somewhere in the middle, which I'm not vocalising at the moment, but we will do in time.
Yeah.
And I'm really hoping that the open forum tonight brings forward some of the ideas we've already got in place, so that we can hear these ideas echoed from people who have these lived experiences.
No, okay. That all sounds good. I think, I'm conscious of taking up your time. You mentioned you got a class in 10 minutes or so.
Yeah, they'll probably turn up in about 10 minutes.
Yeah. So maybe it'd be nice to just sort of look to wrap up. I think, you've come into the sport in a difficult period, I think. It's a period of extraordinary growth, which is positive, but it's also challenging. And also, you've come in a period where, at the national level and at the international level, it's been, I think, messy, it would be fair to say. What do you see as the path forward? Obviously you made a statement a few weeks ago about wanting certain positions within the board to be compensated, which is compensation for your time. That seems like a pretty fair thing in principle. But what does the compensation, what does it get the membership, and what does it mean for the future of the sport?
I think the answer to your question is consistency and collaboration.
Yeah.
So the compensation for certain roles is about consistency.
Yeah.
Is about bringing people into a role and compensating them, probably not fairly, but at least some level of compensation, so that they will stick in their roles for a period of time. They also take their roles seriously, and they make sure that they have the right skill set and knowledge base to be able to be effective in that role.
It's also about accessibility, right?
And we talk about that tonight in the open forum. So we're talking about preparation for the AGM and opening some of these roles to being paid. And the reason that we're talking about it at the open forum tonight is because I think I know what roles need to be paid so that the organisation has consistency, and those particular roles get a super amount of attention, which then produces success elsewhere. But that's just my opinion. And I've had other opinions from the board. So we're bringing it to the members tonight to say, look, this is what we think. What do you guys think? So I'm really interested to see what the members say about that. So that's going to be about the consistency, and the collaboration, I hope, is just a continuation of everything I've been working towards so far, and keeping that going. I think if we've got, if I've got some roles, let's say, for example, so the main things that we look at in British Powerlifting, the main things that we manage in British Powerlifting are international competitions and national competitions, right? And then we're also ensuring that we have the right governance structure so that our home nations and the divisions can also mimic what we're doing, so that they have the right governance. So if we have a consistent competition leader, director, whatever you want to call them, a consistent international performance leader, director, the board leader, so for example, CEO, if those are paid positions and they have fixed terms, for example, 2 years, let's say, CEO is obviously different, but whatever it is, whatever we decide to come out with, let's say hypothetically we have that, then I know between the hours of 9 and 4, I can go to the performance director Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, because that's their working hours, that's what they're paid to do, and I can say, right, we need to do X, Y, and Z. With a volunteer organisation, we don't have that. It's when people have their free time outside of their work, their job, their life. They can't give consistent amount of time. That has been evidenced ad infinitum for years, right? So if we've suddenly got consistency of work, we've got consistency of productivity, then suddenly the changes that need to be enacted can come around a little bit quicker.
Do you think term limits as they are, it's 3 + 2, right? So you get 3 years as CEO and you get the option to stay on for 2 more if the board likes you, I suppose.
That's probably going to change with the articles anyway.
You think that's going to change?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my guess is that you talk about consistency, and it seems like you're feeling that actually 3 years is not very much time to do the things that you want to do. Is there a desire to increase those term limits?
We're probably just going to adhere to UK sport, which I'm pretty confident is 4 years, and you can do 2 lots of 4 years and then you can't do it again.
Okay.
I'm pretty confident, but please fact check me on that if you need to.
But that gives you 8 years, right? As a maximum.
But that's just at board level. Yeah. So I'm talking about the organisation. Yeah. And we also, I think it's fair to say, we probably need some kind of administrative support. So somebody, poor Kim Cowell, not somebody who doesn't have a long-term day job. Yeah,
I'm familiar with poor Kim Cowell.
Who has time, 8 hours a day, couple of days a week, who can get all of the administrative stuff done, whether it's the international administration or whether it's supporting the board or whether it's supporting membership. It's those infrastructures that if we can get compensated and those roles attended to consistently, I think that's going to make a really big impact. But the only way we're going to know is if we try. And the only way we can try is if we do it for a trial period. So I don't really have the answers. I've got the ideas, but again, that's why we have in the open forum, then we discuss it at the board, and this is why time takes change, because we've all got to come to an agreed outcome. So consistency and collaboration.
Would you say that those are the 2 words that define your success? If you wanted to, 20 years time,
Yeah. The only way you can do this, any of these jobs, is by working well with everybody else, or at least the people that you need to work with. And the only way we can make any kind of progress is consistency at your work, consistent hours, or turning up every day, or turning up when you can. And probably consistency of emotional status. So if we are consistent, like if you come to me and you see that I'm chatty one day, then I'm not chatty the next day, that's going to be an impact to you. So I really try to be as chatty as possible to most people, to all people. It didn't happen recently. I was at the English Bench Press Championships and I was having quite a challenging time. Somebody wanted to ask me a question. They didn't quite read the room very well, and I just said, not right now. But I said it in quite a stern term. I have messaged them and apologised, and I said, look, it was a tough time, but I think that's about the only time I've been difficult with somebody.
Yeah, I think being human is understandable.
You'd like to think that, but no, it's not. No. The amount of celebrities you hear, not that I'm a celebrity, sorry, I don't mean that at all, my God, but the amount of people that you know in the public eye who people will criticise because they had an off day is crazy.
Yeah, for sure. And I think to wrap up, could you give us 3 things that you think need to change by the time you leave the role of CEO, and 3 things you can't change or have to keep the same?
It's not a very nice question. 3 things I want to change before I leave. So I want to get the necessary roles compensated. Yeah, I want to get that changed. I want to get the articles and the governance changed. And I want to get the standard of national competitions. And that's what we're talking about when we talk about coaching licenses. We're only talking about national competitions. We're not talking about divisional, we're not talking about home nations, we're talking about the best of this country. I want to get the standard of those national competitions to be consistent. Yeah.
3 things you can't, you want to not change. 3 things you want to preserve.
Oh my God, 3 things I want to preserve. Okay, so I want to preserve the phenomenal, close-knit, supportive culture of this sport, which is how I opened this whole thing. I want to preserve that. I want to preserve the international success and the national standard of lifting. Could be because it's just crazy. It's so, so good. And I want to preserve the amazing people that are in it. There's some amazing people.
Yeah.
And I want them to be in this sport forever. And there was a risk that some of them last year weren't going to be in this sport. So yeah, I'd like to preserve that.
Well, thank you very much.
No worries.
Thank you for talking to me.
You're very welcome.
A
Thank
pleasure.
you.
So, it's been nice meeting the dogs as well. But yeah, thank
You're
you very
so
much.
noisy. You're very welcome. You are so noisy, aren't you?